We're going to talk about Chanukah. Chanukah is a beautiful holiday that what is common for everyone is that you can enjoy it in every age, whether you are a child, whether you are an adult. It kind of goes into all the levels of the heart, if I can call it like that. Of course, if you look at it as is, you'll know some stuff about it, like you light the Chanukiah. I know that in America, Europe, they call it a menorah, just because it's easier to pronounce than Chanukiah. But there is a difference between a Chanukiah and a menorah. So menorah is the lamp. The lamp, actually in modern Hebrew, a regular lamp even is called a menorah. But the menorah that is being referred here is to the original menorah that was in the Holy Temple, and that the Kohen, the high priest, would light with special extra pure olive oil that they would make in a very special way that was only to serve in the Holy Temple, and was also if they wanted to anoint a king, so they would pour it on their forehead. It wasn't a regular olive oil, not even an extra virgin, it was something really special. And every day, the Kohen, the high priest, would put oil, and it was considered like internal light. The light was always on in the Holy Temple. But the difference is that the menorah has 7 candle holders, just like the 7 days of the week, and a Chanukiah has 8. Now, a kosher Chanukiah can have just 8 candle holders. You'll see it more in the Chanukiah that has, the wider circles for the oil, because it is recommended, unless you don't have, and it's fine, it is recommended to have a Chanukiah that you can, at least one of them, that you can actually pour olive oil into it and put a wick and light it with, like that. And then you don't really need what is called the shamash. So then a kosher Chanukiah can have 8 candles as long as they're all in the same height. And it can have 8 candles and 1 extra that can be in the middle or in the side that is higher, that is called the shamash. Now, why is it higher? So that you'll be able, I have one right here behind me. Why is it higher? Because you need to know the difference, that this is not a part of the 8 candles that are actually for the holiday. This is an extra candle that is used to be a helper. A shamash in Hebrew can be a servant, a helper, that is like an extra candle that you just light the other candles with, and then you put it back there. So a Chanukiah, as I said, a kosher one can be with 8 candles and 1 higher, that is the shamash, or it can be just 8 candles. But if the candles are in different heights, it's not a kosher Chanukiah. If they're less than 8 or more, not including the shamash, it's not kosher. Now, this holiday, when we look at the traditions, we light the menorah, the Chanukiah. And of course, the Chanukiah still has similarity to the menorah that they would light in the Holy Temple. And there is a connection, because the holiday is all about the story that happened long time ago, over 2,000 years ago, in the time that the Greeks conquered Israel. And the first, with Alexander the Great, they actually respect Judaism greatly. And they, even though they conquered the whole area of that area of the Middle East, they really respect the Jews and they let them perform all their ceremonies, their religion. They looked up to them as very educated people, and they let them do whatever they wanted. They would take some taxes, but, they all lived happy life. And then at one point, when some of the Caesars changed, there were some Caesars that were very bad to the Jews. And the story takes place when, at one point, the Greeks saw that the Jews, even though they pay them the taxes, they do everything, they refused, most of them at least, refused to slowly kind of integrate with the religion and the way of life that the Greeks wanted everyone to believe in. And if you look at it, the Greeks, their whole, way of looking at the world was how to please me. So the oneself means everything was, the good thing was to beautify the world, to beautify, everything, which is a good thing. But they looked at it as how I put myself, man, in the center, and taking care of myself, taking care of my body, pleasuring my body. That's how they invented the gym, the sauna, the marketplaces that had like all the luxury for themselves. They like to live the good life, as we call it. And they looked again at how they make muscles and the body and this and beautify themselves. Everything was about the body. And it kind of clashed with Judaism, because Judaism is saying thank you for the body, but it's mostly about the soul. And not also about all that we have in this world, but also always thinking about what will be next. What am I taking with me, right? I cannot take my money. I cannot take nothing beside the good deeds that I did and, the practice that I did with, being kind and practicing my connection with Hashem, with God, with the Creator. I can't take anything else, really. I can't take, right? Even the closest people, God forbid, we don't, So it was clashing, because when the Greeks said, leave the Torah, leave all these rules, why do you need to keep all that? Why do you need to keep kosher? You can eat anything, you can do anything. Come, they had in the sauna, not just washing, right? They had other things there. And they said, come join us. I mean, they couldn't get it. Why? And by the way, there were some Jews that said, oh, we're going to be the modern Jews, means we're still Jews, but we can go to the gym, we can go to the sauna, we can enjoy pleasuring ourselves. We don't have to keep everything. It doesn't mean that we're not Jewish. We think we invented the wheel, but we already had those Jews that, it was very tempting. Also, the Greeks rewarded whoever was joining forces with them. They would make them even more rich. They would let them rule sometimes over little areas and so on and so on. So it was very rewarding in a way to live Judaism. Nevertheless, the majority refused. And at one point, the Greeks were very, very upset. They're like, how come they prefer to even live in, almost poverty and not to join us? And then they started to be really upset. Not only that they were upset with the Jews, they wanted everyone not just to believe in their way, they wanted to destroy any tradition that the Jews had. So at one point they said, okay, you can go to the synagogues, you can have a community, but you cannot keep Shabbat. What did they try to do? To make it into a meeting place that people will start have only friendship and like gather around, have fun. But surely after, they will start to see it just as a meeting place that you go on Shabbat, and they'll forsake, all the traditions and what Shabbat is all about. So they knew what they were doing. They were very, very smart. And then they said again with, the whole kosher thing, when they saw that the Jews are not listening, so they started to be more aggressive. And at one point they took a rabbi, put him on a stage, said, you don't need to really eat it, but they put a plate with non-kosher food in front of him and said, just pretend you're eating. Why? Because then everyone else will see you and then they'll start eating not kosher. And the rabbi refused, so they killed him, they executed him. So the story started, and the main thing happened when there was a king, who was like a ruler of the area, that his name was Antiochus Epiphanes, okay? And he was a pagan tyrant from Greece. First he was in the area of Syria today, and then he was, control more and more areas. And he just tried to destroy basically Judaism in 165 BC. And prior to Antiochus, as I said, that escalated. So before that, the Jews lived in relative peace under various rulers. But then, as I said, it escalated. And the Holy Temple was, very active. And then Antiochus and his advisors understood that that's the place that this is the heart of the Jews. So if we're going to destroy their passion to the Holy Temple, we're going to mess it up. They didn't want to destroy the building. They were very fond of beauty, and it was the most beautiful building in the whole world back then. So what did they do? Antiochus, first of all, he placed many burdens upon the Jews. They had to pay higher taxes, very, very high taxes. And he tried to force them to replace their Jewish belief and traditions with the Greek ones. He forced them to also take a new high priest. Now, the high priest name was Menelaus. Just by the name, you understand this was a Jew that we call it in Hebrew, Mit-Yaven. The word Yavan is Greece in Hebrew. Mit-Yaven means he's Greeky. He like a Jew that really is choosing the secular way, and more and more towards he's a secret agent or a double agent. Now, if you're familiar a little bit with the rules of how to even pick a high priest and the whole thing in the Holy Temple, this is a major thing, and it's not just everyone, and the fact that that Antiochus did that was already a very big insult to the Jews. Now, on top of that, the new high priest began to steal, of course, from the Holy Temple, because the Holy Temple, besides being such a beautiful reach with marble and gold and all that, they had many funds there that, for example, one of them was for orphans. So in Judaism, when it was all based on the Jewish laws, one of the things is to always try to create a balance. So, for example, an orphan immediately would become poor, right? Because now the parents cannot provide as they were able before, or that's if one parent died, sometimes two parents died. So the Holy Temple would have a fund of money that people would donate to, that at one point, when the orphan grows up and gets to a certain age, they give them the money so they can get married and start a beautiful life, and to feel, more or less balanced with or equal to everyone else. So again, that's one of the things that high priest started to steal from. And he stole, and also he stole a lot of gold and silver and just gave it to Antiochus. Now, this made, of course, the Jews very angry. And while Antiochus was fighting a war in Egypt, a small group of army Jewish soldiers, it wasn't really soldiers, they were mainly farmers and, very simple life people. But they gathered and they surrounded the temple and forced Menelaus out, okay, from the temple. Now, fearing that the Jews were rising up against him, again, all they wanted was to continue to keep their life peaceful. They never wanted to fight. They never wanted to go to war. They just wanted their holy temple holy and not with the, with a criminal instead of a high priest. But nevertheless, Antiochus, when he was afraid and heard about what they did with Menelaus, he returned from Egypt and stormed his army to the Holy Temple. They tore down the city walls and stripped the temple from anything they could carry. Like really all the gold, the holy things, not all of it, but a lot of it. The soldiers placed a Greek idol upon the golden altar of, the mizbech of the synagogue, and deliberately brought pigs to run around in the sacred ground. Like they knew what Jewish people, that we know that a pig is not a kosher animal, and it's like there's a whole thing about it. So they deliberately did that and put an idol in our Holy of Holies, like where we really, not only that, Jews were, and also the, Jews were threatened with death if they refused to worship the new idols. There was a place with holy water in the synagogue. That's where today some places they take that idea from, but over there was special holy water. So the soldiers deliberately drank the holy water and set fire to some books that has holy writings. And among all the chaos, the oil in the lamp was spilled and the light of the holy temple went out. Now, we said about the pigs, we said about the idols, but also Antiochus deliberately stormed his army on Shabbat, on Sabbath, because he knew that the Jews back then would not fight back. The law of even fighting on Shabbat was much later, because until then, the Jews would not even pick a weapon on Shabbat. So the Jews wouldn't fight back. So thousands of them were either killed or carried off and sold as slaves. So that was for the Jews, devastating. Now, at this point, many of the men ran out of, the city, and they went to hide in the mountains, because they said, okay, they don't want us to keep Shabbat. They want us to bow to an idol. They don't let us do anything. So to the women and children, they wouldn't do anything, and they don't have to go wherever the soldiers are. They kind of respect that women can, kind of get away with certain things. But the men, if we don't keep and we don't go, it's like we don't keep our obligations. So how are we going to keep it? So they decided all to run to the mountains and hide. But then at one point, the women understood that the men are, waiting in the mountains, but they are farmers again, and they don't know what to do. And at one point, there were a few women that gave birth, and now they can't do the circumcision at the 8th day, right? It's something that they have to get a mohel, that's the special rabbi that performed the ceremony. And this is a holy covenant with Hashem. This is what we are obligated from the Torah to do to a Jewish baby, to a baby boy on the 8th day. That's when the soul comes in. And at one point, when the women saw that this is not just temporary, they're not just upset with us and then it's just going to go away. They literally, especially Antiochus, set a target, a goal to destroy all Jewish religion, to destroy Judaism from the root. So that's something that in Judaism, it's called gzerat hashmed, like a decree of hashmada, like completely, God forbid. It's very similar. This is more on the spiritual level, not only physical, but it's like what, in the Holocaust, that's what they try to do. There they try to do it from all levels. The Greeks, they killed a lot of people, but, for them, if you would just say not Jewish, you can continue to live. But Judaism, done. If you dare to do something, they will kill you. So in this situation in Judaism, if it was just like, let's say, God forbid, you got in jail and the food there is not kosher and you're stuck, I don't know where, there's nowhere to get anything, and you must eat to survive. So that's something that if you don't have any choice, if it's really like, so you have to eat something, okay? So maybe you'll try to eat just a rice or just like a vegetable, but even if it's not like, and you'll die if not, then you're allowed to temporarily eat something that is not, just to save your life. But in the situation of Chanukah, again, Gzerot Hashmed, it's not the situation. This is like a war in the, on the spiritual level. So you have to refuse. You have to just refuse. And the man didn't know what to do. So there were a few, it's a very sad story, but there were a few women that went to the walls of Jerusalem as the soldiers are after them with their baby on their 8th day. And they did a circumcision on the wall of Jerusalem and then jumped with the baby down. And, this is really devastating because, what can you say? The men saw their women with their child performing this, act.
Why did they do that?
Because they were not allowed to practice Judaism. They were not allowed to circumcise.
Who did the circumcision if the men were in the mountains?
The women did. And then they jumped with the baby. Because the decree was that if you dare to do a circumcision, the soldiers kill you and the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, if they do it, they were supposed to die. And, in Judaism, you're not allowed to commit suicide. This is like the highest thing. Like, this is like taking a soul. This is like forbidden in so many levels. But again, in this desperate situation, the message was that the women said, if you're going to continue and wait, you won't have any women or children anymore. You have to come now. And then this was, again, heroic saving of the women, the power of the women that kind of pushed them to start practicing more and more to go to war. And then meanwhile, in a city of Modi'in, which is very close to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, there was a family of Kohanim. Their name was the Cheshmonaim. That's the name Cheshmonaim in Hebrew. And there was a father and 5 sons. And the father was Matityahu. And just like in Jerusalem, they brought an idol to the place of where the synagogue, the center of the place of the worship in Modi'in, and they placed an idol there with the soldiers, and they asked them to bow. So when Matityahu came, he refused to obey the king's men, and he actually, instead of bowing, he took a sword and he killed the soldiers there. And then he took his 5 sons and other people. He said a very famous sentence in Hebrew, meh-lekh. He raised his sword, said, meh-lekh. Whoever is with the Creator, whoever is with Hashem, join me. And they just took a bunch of, again, farmers and simple people, and they all went to the mountains. They joined forces with other men that were there, and they started practicing to fight, to just learn to create sort of a guerrilla army. Now, again, they were like, simple people, but for them, what they fought was, this is really fighting for your life, fighting for your loved ones. So they practiced, and then they're starting attack. Instead of waiting, they started to attack the soldiers, to attack the Antiochus army. And as much as the army tried to defeat them, they were unsuccessful. And under the direction of Matityahu, and later on his son Judah, ordinary farmers and shepherds learned how to fight like brave soldiers. And Yehuda had a nickname, Maccabi. In Aramaic, it's the word makevet. It's a word for hammer, and meaning the hammer. So later on, all of his army got the name the Maccabees, or the Maccabim. I'm going to pause for questions because I know you have questions. Yes.
Oh yeah, that was I thought Maccabi was, I didn't know, I forgot what that meant or who that was associated with.
When they say slang, the Jewish hammer,
right.
It was originally from Yehuda, because they said, Thor, all that, he was actually real, and he was very brave, and he would hit them and strike them like a hammer. They couldn't, take over. They didn't know what's happening to them. Now, don't forget that the Greeks had elephants. They were like the most, rich and developed army at the time. And this is, again, a group of farmers that, what do they have? Like wooden swords and like stuff like that. But nevertheless, they learned to attack them, not to even wait for them. They were not in defense. They were like going and attacking them, waiting for the nighttime. Very religious. They were studying Torah. They did not forsake the Torah while they were practicing. They would have time. They would sit and study Torah. So they were a very spiritual army, not just, they were kind of fueling the spiritual and the physical aspects. And they felt that they're really doing a holy war. It was for them like we're fighting for the right to keep our faith and to stay loyal to Hashem and to save our families and our future generations. So they really sacrificed themselves for Jewish people and Judaism to continue. They really fought like really holy people. You asked also about the religion at the time for the Greeks. So it was Hellenism, and they were idol worshippers. They had a god for each, god of, they had Zeus, the whole Greek mythology. That's their belief. They literally believed that there are many gods that lived on the Olympus, which is a mountain in Greece, and that they, it's funny, they believe that the gods are like, their purpose is just to amuse themselves with people, that a lot of them are not even that nice, and that's why they have to always worship them and sacrifice them and give them presents and this and that. For the Jews, this was like ridiculous. Like, why would I give food or bow to a statue? This is obviously not a god, and it's also directly against the first commandment, which is, I'm your God, right? Hashem is saying, the Creator is saying, I'm your God, and that's it. And the second commandment, you shall not have other gods. So how could that be? Any other questions before we continue?
How long did the fighting last? And then how many people do you think were involved?
From which side?
Either, the Jews.
He sent a lot of his army, like most of his army went to fight. And every time they were, they tried to burn caves in the mountains to try to kill them. They would go with their, elephants, and they would attack them as guerrilla warriors from, above, from like the trees, from this, they were very brave. It wasn't just one fight, like we said, okay, one fight, and then that's it. They went to, there were several fights. And what is beautiful, again, is that, let's not forget that the whole trigger was by the very brave women. And there was another brave woman that her name is Yehudit. There's a whole book called the Book of Yehudit, Judith. There was decided not to, actually, there's a book of the Maccabim, and it's a very holy book. Both of those books are very holy, but it was decided when the Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Tuvim, was, the Hebrew Bible was binded, not to put those books inside, even though they're very, very holy. The story was happening, much later, but still they wanted to bind it with the Tanakh, not the Torah. The Torah is, the 5 books of the Chumash, but in the part of the Ktuvim. And it was decided later on not to, for different reasons, not because it's not holy. Some say there are secrets there that they wanted not to put in the Bible, in the Tanakh. Sorry. Some say it's very some parts that are very brutal of the wars, but nevertheless, those are very holy books. And Yehudit, going back to her, another heroic story that kind of changed the situation for the good of the Maccabim. It was a very beautiful young woman, a daughter of a Kohen, of a priest. And when they made their several fights, and again, we're talking the first time when they stormed into the Holy Temple, as you know, they took thousands of Jews. And they killed a lot. And many were taken to Greece as slaves. But those several fights, they didn't manage to kill the Jews. At one point, Matityahu died. And later on, some of the brothers, including at one point, but let's get to that later. So Yehudit, there was the commander of all the army, and he was in a fortress. Thank you. Sorry, fortress in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, and there was no way to get to him. And then she was walking next to his. It was actually a small palace, and he saw her, and he wanted to take her. So she said 2 things. First of all, I'm Jewish. I have to go to the mikveh first. That's my tradition. She also said I have to go after to wash myself, and I will come with my friend, and just tell the soldiers that after I leave your room not to stop me because I'm embarrassed. It's like they were very modest and very religious. So it wasn't something that she, would do normally. And tell them not to hold me, just to let me go. And then I'll come, go to the river. Back then, the mikveh was not always organized. This was in a river or a lake, and let me go to there was a little river, and, so he agreed. He was very, and then she went to a mikveh before, not for him. She went because she didn't think she's going to come out of it alive. And she came with a big basket filled with very good and heavy cheeses and wine. And she came to his cellars and started giving him the wine, the cheese, and playful and this and this. Her purpose was to make him fall asleep. Mm-hmm. And he fell asleep, and then she beheaded him. And she took the head in the basket, and she left. The soldiers were, ordered not to hold her, and she ran away. So that was kind of it, because this was the commander. So back to our story. Finally, after many battles and juicy stories. The king's army, which was large, was beaten by Yehuda's small band of men. And this is considered to be one of the miracles of Chanukah. So this holiday is all about miracles and all about small, or like, the small light winning over a big darkness. The Maccabim, as I said, another name for Yehuda's army, returned to Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim, where they found the temple abandoned and, idolized, like the idols, and the sight made them very, very sad. But they immediately set forth to clean and rebuild the holy temple. When it came time for its rededication, Yehuda and his men looked for, an oil. Again, we said it's not just regular oil, to relight the lamp. But they couldn't find, not even like one jar of oil. And, they looked and they looked and they couldn't find anything. And at one point, as you remember, the soldiers deliberately spilled it. And at one point, they found one small jar that was enough for maybe one day. So they put it for the first day. However, they put it on and in the whole lamp to bring the light, back. And they thought, okay, it's going to be for one day. But the lamp continued to burn for 8 days and nights. And it was enough time for them to make new oil. And this is considered to be another of the Chanukah's miracles. This is, again, a miracle that they knew it's supposed to be lasting for one day, and it was for 8 days. The 8 here on the surface level is why we're celebrating Chanukah with 8 candles and 8 days, as a kind of publishing the miracles. So Chanukah is all about publicizing the miracles. And when we light the candles in the Chanukiah, we share the light with the whole world. Now, that's one of the reasons, or the main reason, that we don't put the Chanukiah hiding inside our home. We have to deliberately put it outside of our home. So when we go inside, it's going to be on the left side of the house, like, on the right, it's going to be the mezuzah. And on the left, it's going to be, you can put a table with your Chanukiot or Chanukiah. It should be one for each member of the household. Even children, you can help them to light their own Chanukiah if you can. If you have only one, it's okay. If you want to build one for yourself, it's also okay, as long as you remember that if you put a shamash, it has to be higher. But it needs to be outside, so the light is being shared with the whole world. If you can't put it outside because you don't have like some people put like a glass box on it so the wind would not turn it off, you can put it in the window that is facing the street. That's another way to put it, but it has to be burning. You're not allowed to use that light for nothing but enjoying it. So, you light the candles, you sit, you enjoy it. You don't even you don't use it for oh, wait, I need to see something, take the candle. No, nothing. It has to, it's so holy, those lights. It's one of the situations that you really take something that is physical, but it's immediately like a transmission, connects you to higher worlds. And during the holiday of Chanukah, you really draw lights from upper worlds. If I want to go a little bit to Kabbalah, it connects us to the next world because it's 8. We have 7 days. The 8 is like Olam Haba. Also, the 8th sphere is Binah. Binah is the kind of the store or the warehouse of the whole sustenance of the whole universe. So we're really drawing light to the world, and the world needs it. So when we think, oh, what can we do with our small Chanukah? Don't you ever think like that. Everyone counts, and every little light that we manage to pray for and light it. And when you light those candles, you should focus and have your consciousness on drawing enormous light to the whole world. And you know what, even keep in mind, maybe there are people in places that can't even light it, or they don't know about it. We want to bless them too. The way we light the candles, it's a little tricky because the reason is good. It's because we want to honor every day. So the way that we light it, we place the candles, we put it right to left, and adding each, adding one for each night. Okay. So when I look at the Chanukah, right, when I'm in the entrance of my house, I'm going to look at it, right, from like entering. I'm going to put the candle on the right side, okay, on my right side. And then I'm going to add every night another candle going forward to the left. But, and that's where it's tricky, I'm lighting, whether it's with the shamash or just like directly if I have oils and wicks with, fire, with a match, I light it left to right. What does it mean? Let's say this is my Chanukah, okay? And I light, what do? The first night, there's going to be only one candle. Right? And if I have a shamash, so I'm going to use the shamash to light that candle, and then I'm going to put the shamash in its place. But then the next day, I have 2 candles, okay? But I have to honor the second day first, and then the one from yesterday. So I'm going to put 2 candles because it's the second day. So I'm putting now 2 candles, and the third day is going to be 3 candles. But I'm always lighting the new one first. Capish? Understood?
So at the end of each day, do you take away the candles so that the upcoming day?
No, they're just burning all the way down. Now, if it was with olive oil, then you have they sell it in the kosher stores and in supermarkets. They sell already ready cups that has like oil inside it, and it's like an oil that is you have some with like it's already ready, and you can just put the cup, and when it's done, it's all burned out. You throw that cup and put a new one for the next days. Okay, but if it's just regular candles, you're just you don't touch it until they're all done. Now it's important that your candles that you're buying are holding for at least a half an hour. It has to be more. Okay, so it's better to buy longer ones, or as I said, with the oil, it can last even sometimes till the next day.
And what's the significance of the order left to right? And then why do you light the newest one first, as opposed to respecting the oldest one first?
That's a good question. So the one you light is the actual day that came. Means we are now on, let's say, the 3rd day of Chanukah, right? So you're lighting the 3rd candle that is representing the 3rd day that came in. After that, you light the one that is in the place of the 2nd and then the 1st. But why are we lighting the Chanukah that way, that we add lights every day until in the 8th day we have 8 candles, and it's like, a lot of light. There was an argument between two houses of scholars, very big scholars, very big sages that lived, if I'm not mistaken, around the 1st, 2nd century, the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. And they were houses because they were like kind of the head sages, the head rabbis, and they had students, many students. And Shammai said, we should light all the 8 candles and then reduce, one by one until the last night we'll have 1. And Hillel said the opposite. He said, we want to extend the light. We want to increase the mitzvah. So we have to light 1, start with 1 and go all the way to 8. And it was decided that it would go by Hillel. It doesn't mean that Bet Shammai, that he was not a very big scholar, but he, with many things that he ruled, he saw more what's going to happen in the end of the days when Mashiach comes, like different things and Hillel said, okay, but this is what we need to do right now. And even though they love to argue about Torah and everything between them, they loved each other. It was very, we call it kinat sofrim, like they were
philosophers.
Yeah, they were like, but not just philosophers. They had both passion for the Torah, so they loved learning together, even when they disagree on things. That's how they grew. Now, another thing is that while the candles are lit, like on, you're not allowed to do any work, okay? When it's Shabbat, because there's always going to be one Shabbat during Chanukah because it's 8 days. So whenever Shabbat falls, you light the Chanukah candles, of course, before Shabbat candles. Okay, this is very important because you don't want to break Shabbat by lighting Chanukah candles. And let me give you a little bit of traditions and the other halachot, Jewish laws. So Chanukah is always on the 25th of Kislev. The scholars, the sages, the rabbis back in the 1st century, they already said that the holiday was kind of planted in the Torah because the 25th of the Hebrew month of Kislev, 25, when you count the 25th word in the Torah, in Genesis, the word is or, light. So they always said the codes, everything is already in the Torah. So it's kind of like, even though they chose not to put a book in the Tanakh, there's still something from it there. And as I said, it takes 8 days everywhere in Israel and out. You know that some holidays they add a day, not in Chanukah. You're allowed to work during the holiday, but not during the time of the candle burning. That time should be just to meditate, enjoy, eat some food that is special for that holiday that we're going to talk about in a second or more.
So let me ask a question on that. Yeah, you're allowed to work during Hanukkah, just not while the candles are lit.
Yes. And of course, not on the Shabbat. That is because Shabbat, right. Yeah.
But there's different candles. There's a candle that lasts half an hour, and then you said there's a candle that can last till the next day. Right.
So it's like, that's a good question, actually. And the best is, when do you light the candles? You light them after sundown. So if you have to work, you can light it a little bit after, So,
or you just buy the candles that don't last a day and a half.
Well, it's like to fancy the mitzvah, it's like you don't want to shorten the mitzvah so that like it's where we're looking for the loopholes, right? But it's better that you just, enjoy your evening with your family. It's a very family-oriented holiday that
We're talking about the next day, like, the next morning or something.
No.
The candle's lighting for a day and a half.
By then. It's done. Even the oil, yeah, it's done. Don't worry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you also don't have to sit the whole night. You can, but you don't have to. Yeah, but usually the candles would last for like, an hour to 2 hours, something like that. And during that time, we have traditional food that we eat on Chanukah. The most famous one is donuts. Now, why all these, foods that, again, they have oil, and also it's traditional to eat some cheese foods. So another famous food is the latkes, that it's kind of like they make it from usually potatoes, and they make it into like they grind potatoes, they grind onion and some eggs and a little bit of, you don't have to, a little bit of flour, and they make it into a patty and they fry it. So why? Because you want to eat food with oil because of the oil. So it's kind of it's not a diet, you don't do diet on that holiday. But it's very delicious. So people like to eat next to the latkes. It's a Yiddish word for those special. It's very similar to hash brown, just like instead of broken, they put it into an actual patty. People like to eat sour cream next to it. That's like a very famous Jewish, way of eating it. Some like to put sugar on it. Some like to make it from sweet potatoes, from zucchinis, from a mix, whatever you want. Be creative, and make it. And of course, the donuts, that is like sweet for, at least for the children. They love it, and they put different filling inside. They have, in Israel, if you go, you'll be like, wow, they make it. It's a whole show. They have pistachio vanilla creams, and they have like those things coming out of it. It looks like ice cream already. It doesn't even, it's like really, it's like they make like really like desserts that you don't believe that it's a donut anymore. And yeah, like Google it after, look for like special Israeli donuts, or like they'll show you. The most famous one is the dough, the donut dough with the red jello inside, the jelly inside.
Right.
But really they make wow. Anyway, so there's something also called chocolate gelts, that is special chocolate that is covered like a coin, that's very famous to give to the children during the holiday of Chanukah, because it's also tradition. There's a tradition to give a little bit, some like money from like the grandma, the grandpa during the holiday. Some people turn it into a holiday that they give every day of the holiday a gift. This is like, it's like a new tradition. Mainly it's to give some money to the children and the chocolate gelts and have just a celebration. Very important, I want to share my screen to show you the blessings that we say when we light the Chanukah. This one is from Chabad.org. I chose this one because it has the transliteration also. On the first day, you say 3 blessings. Okay, the first one, as you say, is bless you, Hashem, the King of the universe, that sanctify us. Every mitzvah we do, we make ourselves holier and purify ourselves. So the reason that God gave us the ability to bless, to make a prayer, is really for us. It's not for him. He can survive even without our prayers, but he loves our prayers. He gave us opportunity to be a part of him on earth, to be small creators in this world. So when we say a blessing, when we light this candle or whatever other blessings, we really created a blessing that was not there before. We are very, very powerful, more than we think. We just have to learn to use it for the good side, to be a soldier of light. And this as you can see, this is the transliteration. And the first blessing, they all start the same. It says, ah-sher ki-deh-shah-noo beh-mitz-voh-tahv veh-tzee-vah-noo lah-hahd-lik ner Chanukah. Okay, that commanded us to light the light of the candle of Chanukah light. The second one is, again, start the same. Bless you, God, that created miracles to our fathers on the olden days and in this time. What does it mean? He continues to make miracles for us constantly. And then the last blessing for the first night only is the blessing of sheh-ah-sah. This blessing we say over any new thing. When we buy a new car, we say this blessing right here. When we buy a new garment, new shoes, a new house, anything that is new, we say this blessing. Now, why do we say it here? Because this is the first day of Chanukah. This is a new, it's like the first time we celebrate Chanukah for this year. Every year is like new. So we say this blessing on the first night also. And on the second and on, we say only those two. The first one we say every time, and the second one. Okay, I will send it to you after class. There are special songs like Ma'oz-tzur, ha-nerot halalu, that ha-nerot halalu means those candles, these candles, sorry. And those are songs that are very holy. They have inside them different codes that are, to make it happy. Bottom line, we really want to suck it in, this light that is opening. It's a gate in time. It's not just, okay, let's light Chanukah candles. It's really a gate in time that opens completely only for those 8 days, that allows us to connect to very big sustenance that we can really draw for our lives, to draw the power of miracles. Now, how do you really draw the power of miracles and make sure that it stays with you? How you act, right? If I want to really live life filled with joy and miracles, I have to behave in a certain way that would help me to keep it, right? So, number one, appreciation. If I appreciate, if I constantly say thank you to Hashem, right? Appreciate my loved ones, appreciate my work, appreciate my car, appreciate my home, appreciate my clothing, appreciate everything, understanding that everything I have, God forbid, there are people that don't have it. So by appreciating and sending light and sharing with others that are less fortunate, right? Giving charity is a very important thing in Judaism. Not to steal from other people, to be loyal to our partners. All these things, they're not simple in the eyes of the Creator. So all these things would make sure that we keep the light with us and that we plugged in on Chanukah, and it would stay with us at least until next Chanukah. Happy holiday, Chag Sameach.